We can get you up to 50 offers in about 10 minutes, 0% interest for 2 years. It's easy and it's fast, do not require collateral. We don't actually even need to see the business, purely based on personal credit. And if it's good enough, then there are options available for you, including money at 0% interest. You can do whatever you want. I just summarized an hour-long webinar. It's about 3 minutes. To do this, you need to have a credit score of at least...
I am so honored to have here today. I look at you as like the king of all things relating to loans for small businesses, because you've actually been through it. And I'm so excited, Boyd, to have you here today.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
And I know that this is one of the biggest issues with small business owners, especially those just starting out.
Yeah.
How can I get money? How can I fund a win if they're in the government contracting? How do I get money to make payroll? Or just how do I go about getting money? What kind of advice do you have for those out there that may wonder these things?
Well, it's a massive question and a massive problem. There just aren't traditional sources of capital available for a startup or somebody who has maybe been around for a couple of years and they're trying to scale. It's very hard in that situation to get money. The banks generally only want to lend based on past performance. So if you're going in as a startup, you have no history to share. And so you have nothing to make them comfortable about loaning you money except, well, I have a plan, I have projections, but projections are just hopes and dreams, honestly. It's hard to lend on. Some will lend on that, but not many. Like 90% of startups get rejected. So the question is, where do you go? You need to find what's called an alternative lender, like myself. We have options that banks just simply don't. We have funding that is based purely on the startup, the founder, the entrepreneur's personal credit situation, because there's no business history to look at, right? So we have options that can go purely based on personal credit that do not require collateral. And while I'm always interested to read a business plan, we don't actually even need to see the business plan. In this case, we just look purely at how well have you managed your personal credit so far. And if it's good enough, then there are options available for you, including money at 0% interest for a year or more that somebody can access. And you can do whatever you want.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And what kind of businesses have you funded? What's like that typical person who comes to you and says, hey, I need funding?
Great question. I think the most common is a single entrepreneur. A lot of women. Lots of women are starting businesses. Somebody asked me the other day, with the question about the economy, are you finding more customers or fewer customers? And I said, when the economy is bad, people start businesses. When the economy is good, people start businesses. So we're always busy. But like, for example, last night I was at a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce event here where I live, and about 80% women, and everybody starting their businesses or have just started or want to. It was a great night. But most of the people coming to me are women who need to get something happening. They're stuck where they are. Somebody has died or divorced or something, and they need a new source of income. And so they go to people like SCORE Networks or SBDC offices and get help putting their plans together. And many of those advisors at those locations direct people to me. But I'd say it's largely women who are starting the businesses that we see the most. But we've had a huge variety. We really have. But to lump it like that, I think generally it's women, single, like a sole proprietor, single member LLC, women.
Wow, that's really eye-opening, because I come across so many different types of business owners, and it's good to know that you have this influx of not only female business owners, but it's like a single person. Because I think sometimes the mindset is, oh, I'm super small, I'm micro. And it's like, no, you're exactly what a small business is. So what does a person who's this like solopreneur, new, wanting to do amazing things, they need funding, what are some options for them?
Okay, some options. There's 4 primary options, but really I'm thinking there's probably only 3 that we really utilize. And one isn't even a loan at all. With all the layoffs that have happened and all of the layoffs that probably are still coming, if somebody has a 401k savings account, retirement account, now with a former employer because they've just been laid off or terminated or something, you can use that money to start or buy a business without any kind of tax penalty at all. Back in 2008, when the big recession hit, I had to gut my 401k, and I paid some serious penalties to access that money. But there's a program called the ROBS Act, ROBS, which allows you to actually take your own money and use that to invest. So if you don't have to borrow, don't borrow. But that's getting a little more famous now, was that program. The most common one I think the most popular thing that we do with people is we get them funding through what's called a syndicated line of credit, where, for example, I'll say, okay, this is Kizzy, and she's looking for $60,000 to open a food truck. Okay, so we leverage our relationships with actually the large banks, surprisingly, and say, Kizzy's looking for $60,000. Here's her credit report, and maybe Chase Bank says, okay, we'll fund $20,000. And Goldman Sachs says, we'll do 20. Bank of America says, we'll do 20. So in aggregate, in total, there's your 60, but they come in the form of 0% interest credit cards from these large banks for at least a year. In fact, U.S. Bank yesterday said we're going 24 months with one of those. So 0% interest for 2 years. So you can access that money and use it for whatever you want to. It comes in the form of one or more credit cards, which you can use as credit cards, but you can also make wire payments with them. You can write checks against them, and you can even convert them into cash and have cash be put into your business bank account. So it's a very flexible, somewhat easy to get source of funding. Again, we do that one the most. And then the other option, that third option really would just be personal term loans. We know how to get that. We have a little AI program we use where we can get you up to 50 offers in about 10 minutes. And you're not obligated to take any of them, but we can just look through them together and see, does this one work? Does this one work? And we take 2 or 3 and get all 3 at once. But your own savings, your 401k, the syndicated line of credit, or the personal term loans, or a combination of any of those is what we'll use to get an entrepreneur the money they need to get started, to buy something, to found something, to expand something, whatever.
Wow. And what type of credit score is needed for this? Especially I'd love the 4-month 0 interest credit card.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we were excited when that came out yesterday. To do this, you need to have a credit score of at least 680.
Okay.
The higher the better, but at least a 680. And your current credit card utilization ideally is 30% or less. We can go as high as 45%. And then as long as there's not a lot of derogatories or late payments or things like that, as long as, 680, lower-ish credit card utilization, and then we're in the game. And when somebody does an application, this is fun. When someone does an application with us, our AI system now looks at it immediately and tells me within seconds, this person is probably going to qualify for this. So we can tell them just right there, hey, you want 100? You probably can only get you 60 because just based on everything. You want to go ahead? And they say yes or no. It's easy and it's fast. And I like that we can give those ranges before we start.
Wow, I really like that. And 680 seems like a reasonable credit score for someone to obtain.
Yeah. The SBA requires a 700 generally to get funded. So we're just kind of even slightly below the SBA.
And do you help those that may need to improve their credit score? I mean, this is definitely a space I know nothing about. I've heard of interesting stories, but it seems like there's got to be a legitimate way to really help improve one's credit score.
Yes, there's a couple of ways. We don't do it directly, but we refer them to people who do this all day long, every day, all day. They're the true professionals. But we'll refer them to our friends, one's called ASAP Credit. They have a money-back guarantee. They've done terrific work for our clients. They'll get denied inquiries off the credit report. They can help get mistakes off the credit report. They can really clean it up. And so we've had several people come back and say, okay, I did my cleanup and now I qualify for it. Okay, let's move ahead. Let's get you something. So we do have allies that we'll send you to get those credit scores cleaned up.
That's really good. That's really, really good to hear. And how long have you found on average does the process take?
Ooh, that's what the famous answer in lending is it depends. So it depends. We've had some people come back in 2 weeks, and I've got one guy, he's into his 4th round in 4 months, and I keep getting this report. Hey, he just did another round. He's doing better. He's going another round. So if his credit was really messed up, so he's 4 months down the road now getting it fixed. But honestly, whether it takes a day, or 6 months, if your credit is below a 680, you're not going to get options with anybody for anything. So you got to put the time in, and it's not expensive, but you just have to put the time in to get it fixed.
So are there options for people with a score under 680?
There are, yeah. And that's the number one reason why we can't help somebody is they're too far under a 680. They're not close enough. I have two groups that I commonly will refer people to. One is called ascendus.org, and they're largely throughout the country. They can work with lower credit scores, and they have good programs, really good programs. But you have to have been in business for at least 6 months. That's the only catch for them. And then the other group is the BBIF, the Black Business Investment Fund. Again, lower credit scores, great programs, but you have to be in business at least 12 months. So if somebody at least has been in business for that long, I can send them to one of those two groups. But otherwise, for a true startup to get money, you're going to need to be a 685.
And then also, if I recall, for the Black Business Fund, you don't have to be a Black business owner.
Correct. You don't have to be, and they make a nice point of saying so, but that's just the name of the group and who founded it.
Well, these sound like really good options. Like, have you found that once a small business, they go one of these paths, do they then pivot into traditional lending? Do they continue? Like, what have you noticed?
Yeah, hopefully, yes. The first 2 years are the hardest. It's flat out. There's no way around it. The first 2 years are the hardest time to get money. But once a business reaches 2 years of successful operations and they have the tax returns to prove it, then suddenly all the banks care about you. And so it's easier then to get financing with less expensive terms and different options if you want to go with a traditional bank. So we like to think of ourselves kind of like a financial incubator. We'll bring you what we have, and we really want you to get to that 2-year mark. And if then you fly away, that's fine. We can offer everything that a bank can, SBA loans and lines of credit, but the banks might have a slight advantage on us on some of those rates. But in those first 2 years, there's nobody like us out there providing these kinds of options to help somebody get going.
Right. And what are some things that people can do today that may want funding? Maybe they need funding down the road. What's one thing they can do immediately?
One thing is check their credit report and just see where their standing is. You can check your credit report for free once a year, or if you subscribe to any of the credit monitoring services, even sometimes your credit card itself will have a link to a credit page. But it's important to know where you are, because that's the first question. Well, the second question you're going to ask somebody. The first question you're going to ask somebody is, have you gone to the bank already? And they'll say, yeah, but they said no. I said, okay, what's your credit score? I mean, oh gosh, last time I checked, it doesn't matter what was the last time you checked. Let's look right now, because things change. The best thing they can do is just know where they are from their credit standing, because that'll open the door or keep it closed.
And what happens? I mean, are there situations where business owner, they meet all the requirements, they get the loan, and then something just happens? And how does that work if they're not able to make the repayments?
Oh, well, I'm not aware of any of those that have happened yet, knock on wood, right? But the agreements they have are directly with a bank, some lending institution. And so they work that out with the bank. If they default or they can't make it. So they can call and attempt to negotiate, reducing something, slowing something down. But ultimately, they have to settle that with the person who gave them the money.
Okay. I just wondered if they default or how that may.
It's just like with anything. You go get a car loan and you can't pay on it, they'll come take the car back, or but they'll put some kind of a lien. Traditionally, anytime you get a loan with anybody, not a credit card, but if it's a term loan, for example, they'll put a lien on something. But we don't require collateral, so they'll just put a lien on your name, yes, to just say at some point we're going to have to get this money back.
And what about those where maybe they're in a partnership and it could be 50-50 and they're looking for some type of business loan or just a loan? What do you recommend to people in those type of situations?
If it's an existing business, then we try to get the business qualified itself. If they have enough business credit, enough business history, we try to get them approved based on the strength of the company, not them. That's a little rare because people don't really understand business credit and they haven't built it properly. So it'll go back to the owners. And so we'll ask the owners to apply for the loan together. It's co-signers. Or in some cases where one partner has really crummy credit and the other partner has good credit, well, then the partner with the good credit can get the loan, and then they can work out the paperwork between them as to how that may affect, the assets or the percentage of the business they have, or who's in first position to get cash back or something to pay off the loan. So they can loan it to the partnership, for example, and then work that out with the paperwork.
I see. That makes perfect sense. I come across a lot of people who are in like a 50-50 partnership or 49-51 or whatever the split is, and they're always interested in what to do for credit.
Yeah.
Really.
Ideally, it's the business, but if not, we'll have to go to an individual.
And how about those where they're like, look, I want to buy something. They're wanting to buy a business or a franchise, or maybe they want to buy out one of the owners. Is this still an option for them?
It is. And depending on how much money we're talking about would direct what the option is that we introduce. If it's anywhere between 1 and 5 million, we'd probably bring in an SBA loan expert. If it's less than that, we can have some options. For example, today's Thursday. On Tuesday, I had a husband and wife contact me because they want to buy a villa in Italy and turn it into a corporate retreat where they feed them and teach them how to be better business leaders. But no bank in America will loan on property. At least they couldn't make to loan on the property in Italy, and they don't have relationships with Italian banks. So we're actually looking at this syndicated line of credit as a possible way to get, and this is about $750,000, but they have excellent credit. So we may be able to get them that money at 1 year and a half, even 2 years, 0% interest. To buy, because in this, it doesn't matter what they use the money. Nobody's going to ask what they're using the money for. So they can get the funds that way and perhaps then buy this property in Italy that they're looking for. So,
my gosh, that's so brilliant.
Yeah, it's cool. These options, because if you walk to the bank and say, I want to buy a house in Italy, they're like, get out of here. We don't, but this money, again, nobody's asking what you're using it for. So
nobody is.
We're flexibility.
At all. And that's why I'm so glad that you're here, because that creativity is needed.
Definitely.
I just had a coaching call, and one of my students asked, she was like, so should I have the money piled up? Because she's bidding on short-term and long-term rentals that the federal government purchases. And of course, I talked about you and gave her my little answer, but it's always there. You have those who are trying to plan. You have those where they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect this. And then you have those that have no idea. I know when I first got in this space over 10 years ago, I had no idea. And I think in another area most may not be as familiar is, I would love for you to talk about business credit.
Yes.
What does that really mean? How does someone even figure out what their credit is or isn't?
Yeah, business credit is probably the least understood and most important part of running a business. Small owners, they'll start their business, they'll use their own cash, they'll use their own credit cards, and they get to a point where they've spent everything. They've spent their cash, they've maxed out their credit cards, and they're just stuck until they get some kind of new cash infusion. And this is usually because they don't understand business credit. The business credit, it's funding tied to the entity itself, the business. And you get to where the business is judged on its capability to pay the bills, not you as the owner. And so with business credit, and I have a webinar I do about this where I literally explain every step of the process in order to generate the proper business credit and how to get it, because you can do so much more with business credit. For example, with your personal credit, every time you have an inquiry, a hard inquiry on your credit, like I want to buy a house, I want to buy a car, every time there's an inquiry, it hurts your credit score. And you can only have so many a year before they're like, no, you've had too many inquiries, we're not going to loan you money. But with business credit, it's the opposite. The more you ask for it, the higher your score goes. The more you use and spend, the higher your score goes. You get a business credit card, you max out your credit card as long as you're making your payments on time. Guess what? Here's another one. As opposed to, no, you use all your credit cards, you can't have more. Your utilization's too high. So business credit is critical. And you can get so much more money when you create the business credit the right way.
And what is the first step to creating it the right way?
First step is, and this is one of the slides, and there's actually 7 steps, but the most important thing, of course, is to have your EIN number with the IRS. But then you have to build a foundation so that the credit agencies and the business lenders can find you. That means you register in a state. You actually have a website, whether you're an e-commerce company or not, doesn't matter. You have to be credible, have a real email address tied to your domain. Don't be otrofinancial@gmail.com. You got to have your real email, right? Get a business checking account, and then you get registered in all of the directories you possibly can. There's so many that are still free. Then, and the real secret then is once you have that, then you start establishing what are called trade lines with the companies that do report payment activity to Dun & Bradstreet. And only about 3% of the companies in the country actually report your activity. So it's worth it to go to those vendors because all your activity gets reported to Dun & Bradstreet. And it can take 3 or 4 months for this to happen when you're a brand new company. But after about 4 months, you go to Dun & Bradstreet, you look, and suddenly you have what's called a PAYDEX score, PAYDEX, PAYDEX score of 80. And that's like having a 700 credit score personally. You say, okay, great, I'm in the game. And to get these trade lines, and I have call it tier 1 trade lines. There's 10 of these companies who will automatically issue you credit just by asking. And they'll report your activity. But after about 4 or 5 months, you can go to the tier 2 companies who require a PAYDEX score. So you've generated one by then. Now you give them your PAYDEX score, and you keep now buying from this next tier of companies, which includes companies like Exxon. I mean, if you have a fleet of cars, you want to buy everything from Exxon because they're going to record your activity in Dun & Bradstreet. So there comes a point, and it could take 8 months, it could take 1.5 years. It just depends on what your volume is and how dedicated you are to this. But then that's when your business starts getting offers for free capital or very inexpensive capital. I call that the free money club.
Oh.
So when you start getting offers from the banks, please come use our money at like no cost, then you know you're there. And you can start applying for lines of credit using only the business information, not your FICO score, not your social security number. And you can get so much more in funding through the business than you could ever get to yourself. I just summarized an hour-long webinar. It's about 3 minutes, but that's the gist of it. That's the magic.
Well, I love it. And it's great magic because that's super helpful because especially in the federal government space, you don't always have to have an email address connected to a domain. Many people have won contracts without doing that. So it's really good to know that for those who are looking into building business credit,
Yes.
you definitely want to have a domain. You want a website. You want an email that's connected to the domain. You want to make sure that you take all of the steps to have that information reported.
Then set up your trade lines and be diligent with those trade lines.
Yeah. And I will share, we use a lot of business credit cards. I definitely got to look into that 24-month thing though. But I have found that that's the case is they're always offering or
always
offering or
always offering.
Hey, do you want to get a car for your business? I'm like, whoa, like I've never been asked so many times about a car loan for the business. And
Yeah.
it's not anything that we need, but to your point, it happens a lot. It's like,
And there is a bank, I'm not going to name right now, but when you have sufficient credit, one of the banks has a program that lets you transfer a vehicle that you own personally to the business. And so for a small business owner, what does that do? It suddenly improves their debt to income ratio because the car payment is now belonging to the business and improves their credit score and doesn't affect the business at all. It's still going to make the same payment you were making.
wow,
So that's one of the tricks, one of the nice little things you do in when you have that business credit.
dang, that's amazing.
Yeah, or another one, there's a program where you could buy, using a business credit card, you could buy 4 cars in a day and put them out to rent locally on Turo. And you generally make $500 a car per month. So a couple $1,000 just semi-passively just because you have good business credit. So just little tricks and little bonuses like that we can teach people when they have business credit established.
Wow. I love that. I mean, especially like the Turo, because there's some cities, major cities that have them, but then you have cities that may be a little smaller and maybe they don't have the type of cars that people would want. This is a great option even if you start with 1 car, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, a little extra $500 a month. For a lot of people, $500 a month would make a big difference, honestly.
Yeah, it's huge.
$2,000 on the side, that's pretty good.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It truly is. Well, this is exciting. How
Good.
can I love this because it's always needed, and I appreciate that you're very open and transparent. I really appreciate that because, there was a time where I had a very low credit score and I found a lot of money with high interest rates, and I went through some pretty terrible experiences, and I don't want anybody else to ever go through what I had to go through
Yeah.
with that.
That's similar to my story because I became a business loan broker after being told no by the banks when I was trying to buy a business a few years ago. There's got to be other people going through the same thing I'm going through. So I'm helping people avoid the same challenges that I faced.
Which is the best position to be in because you can
Love it.
relate to these people, to all the amazing
Oh,
people who reach out.
yeah, I've been there. I know exactly where they are.
Yes. And Boyd, what's the best way for somebody to get in contact? Because you mentioned a presentation. I know you're at different events.
Yes.
What's the best way for somebody to connect with you?
Best way is to email me. And it's Boyd, Boyd, Boyd at otrofinancial.com.
And it's Otro like
OTRO, Otro, the Spanish word for other or alternative. Yeah, so that's how we named ourselves.
Yes. So y'all make sure you put the email in there, reach out. He'll definitely reach out. I reached out to him because I heard Boyd speak at an event not too long ago virtually. And I was just blown away because, again, it's about connecting you with what works best, not about what's best line in somebody's pockets.
Yeah, right.
I really appreciate that.
Yep.
Any kind of closing remarks? Anything else people should walk away or run with?
Oh, yes, definitely. Anybody who calls you offering money, unless it's one of the major banks like we just talked about, right? Anybody who calls you offering money, I say put your hand on your wallet and back away. These are going to be usually what's called a merchant cash advance or an MCA or a cash advance. They can kill you. It's not technically a loan, but they're quasi-predatory. They are hard to get out of. They tie into your credit card processing system and they take money out every single day. The interest rates can be as high as 50%. I had a client I was talking to this morning. She said, I'm never doing that again. It almost killed us. I know, and we should call this first. Just don't do it. There's got to be some other option than to do a merchant cash advance. I don't like them and we don't do them, but we can, hopefully find a different alternative for you. But again, anytime somebody comes to you with an offer, be suspicious. It's better to do your research and talk to people and find out who's reputable and then approach them. But you don't want to just answer the phone and accept a credit card. So
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you warned us about that because it's a lot. It's a lot. And also for those of you, when you take out business loans, my goodness, they will call you. So
be careful.
Be careful.
And most of the people that are referred to us come through our relationships with the SCORE mentors or SBDC centers or places like that. So they know that we're going to do everything we can to take care of somebody because our reputation is on the line every day. So.
Oh, wow. Well, I appreciate this. I can't thank you enough. And one more time, will you share, Boyd, your email address?
Boyd, Boyd, Boyd at otrofinancial.com.
Yes, please reach out. It doesn't matter where you are in the United States.
Correct.
Reach out to Boyd. Well, thank you so much. And
you're welcome.
Yeah. And as always, everyone, like, subscribe, hit the notification button. Check out winnerswaybook.com. And don't forget, everything is possible. Until next time, take care.